Hi everyone, back again with another video, and this one is a bit of a different video. It's not exactly a review, nor is it a reaction video. It's more like there's two movies that came out last year that I very much liked, and that was The Substance, which was my number one favorite, and then A Different Man. I think that came out like number 5 or 6 of last year. I think number 6. Really both absolutely solid movies with very similar kind of themes and kind of messages, but more so very similar themes, what happened in them. So basically what this video is going to be about is delving into like the similarities with these movies and also the differences. And just to kind of have a dialogue about that and just talk about these two really solid films. And also to, I think, also to shed light on A Different Man. The movie didn't get a lot of notice, I feel. It did make some money, but I don't think it got anywhere near its budget, I'm pretty sure. So that's a bit unfortunate, The Substance did get quite up there, and it won, I think, an Oscar for Best Makeup, which was good. I'm surprised it didn't get a few other wins, even for editing. I thought the editing was really good. Editing is good in both films, actually. But anyway, let's get into this. So I've got notes here for this video, which is interesting. I usually just have it on my computer, but I kind of wrote it down, and yeah, in regards to just structuring the video, it was kind of better for me to write it this time. So hopefully we'll see how that goes. But anyway, so I basically stated what this video will be about. So yeah, I felt like 2024 felt like a bit more of a year of looking at self-image and just mental health a bit more than usual, because there's not usually two films that come out in a year that really highlight that. I feel there's sometimes years without any that are so kind of direct. Granted, not direct in a point where it felt preachy or anything like that. I don't feel like either of these films kind of rubbed it in your face with some type of message that's very just a second, with a message that was too kind of direct and obvious. It didn't feel like that, but it's definitely quite evident that it's addressing certain themes that are quite psychological at the same time, though. But yeah, so I really did like that last year was like that. So let's see, hopefully this year we'll have something similar come out. Maybe not in the same thing, but something still quite psychological. I don't know, there are other movies that come out that are psychological, but I feel like these ones were on a different level or a different tier. But anyway, next thing, I just want to give a spoiler warning. If you have not seen either one of these films, I'm going to be talking a lot about them. With the similarities and differences, I'm going to be talking about what happens in the plot. I'm going to be talking about the themes and certain things, with the characters. So yeah, I'm going to be kind of giving away a lot. So if you haven't seen these films, I would highly recommend you stop watching this video right now and go watch them, because they are really solid films. I have got reviews for both of them. If you are not particularly sold yet on watching these movies, I have got 2 reviews for both, so I'll put them on the YouTube card thing if I remember to do that. So just check those out on my channel, and watch them, because I would highly recommend both these films, and I wouldn't want to take away the impact by watching further if you haven't seen it. So anyway, there you go. There's your warning. Okay, let's start off with similarities with both of these films. Okay, so both of them I found had interesting filmmaking styles, very good choices and quite intentional choices of how to use, and I'll lead to the next thing, but next point I'll say is they both had solid editing choices as well, and just in general the cinematography, it all felt quite intentional and had a certain impact and helped the audience and myself to react or to feel what the characters were feeling. So it was intentional. It wasn't just very dry shot reverse shot. Granted, they had shot reverse shot, but there was a lot of times, especially even with A Different Man, where they had the camera just sit back a bit more and just see what's happening rather than cutting back and forth. There was a couple of times like that, and I thought that was pretty cool. But yeah, in general, really solid filmmaking choices in both films. I felt that definitely gave a different feel for both of them, in a different way. Anyway, leading to the next thing. both had a slight horror feel to them as well, especially like a body horror. Both of them had that to them, especially. And I found that to be like, I feel like it definitely was good in the sense of feeling quite shocking, feeling like the main characters and feeling that tension, from both perspectives of these characters. It was good that they, I think, in a way, had that horror feel to them, because it feels like that. I feel like when we experience this type of thing as humans, the idea of self-image and fitting in and kind of sense of belonging and even a sense of like survival, it is scary, right? It's not something that's just it's like an afterthought. No, it is something that we do think about quite a lot, and we do kind of get caught in overthinking. I think a lot of us do, especially from my experience. I definitely have. So I think having that horror feel was brilliant, to really accentuate that. So the next thing is both characters are in the entertainment industry, which really, I think, once again brings that horror feel as well, because the way they're perceived and the way they look and all this stuff is even heavier on them, especially in The Substance, but even in A Different Man, this was something that it was interesting that his character in a way was still able to kind of do certain things. It's actually a physical thing. It's a physical thing. Like, he actually has quite I don't think he was born with it. It must have came over time. But anyway, he struggles with this condition where he looks quite different from others, and he still is able to somehow get into doing little video stuff, into like in films and in production with certain things. He hasn't done much, but still the fact that he got in somewhere is quite cool, that he still went with that. But even still, you can tell that there's a pressure still on him, and there's this sense of despair he gets at times because of the way he looks, and he's quite, judgmental on it. And also because of just how society is created, we get that extra pressure, to be and look a certain way. But anyway, moving on to kind of the next things. Both characters, because of the entertainment stuff, they feel insecure. They both struggle with this, and they kind of withdraw, actually, because both of these characters, for most of the film, they live alone. And I think part of it is because of that withdrawal as well, and that they kind of just need kind of that, need to get away, which is understandable for most people. I feel they kind of need that alone time, but I feel like in ways with these characters especially, perhaps they need that as well, because this pressure they feel, perhaps. But yeah, just from the societal expectations and from comparison, yes, these characters both feel insecure because of what's happening, right to them, and then what's causing that in their mind, and so on. And then, yeah, I basically have said this, but yeah, both characters, next point is both characters struggle with comparison. And that's because of, as I said, societal standards, and then also seeing themselves and like all this stuff. And especially like in The Substance as well, she's getting older, and this is where, a lot of comparison comes in with, oh, the younger people look more desirable or more so on. And so they're like, just because of that, boom. And then that's making her especially feel insecure and wanting to change and so on. And yes, so from the comparison from society, they want to conform to it. They want to try to fit into that, that mold, so they'll be accepted, right? And this happens on both characters' ends. The interesting thing is, especially in A Different Man, even when he changes himself, certain circumstances happen where, he goes back into kind of meeting past people, this girl he used to live next to, and then he wants to conform back in a way. So either way, he's trying to fit somewhere. Instead of embracing who he is in the moment, he's always wanting to try and kind of, fit into a certain mold. And if that mold's not fit, he, as I said, he gets that insecurity and this sense of he withdraws more and more. And I feel like on both levels, these characters are doing this. Yeah. All right, moving on to the next thing. From that, you feel the struggle in both characters. You can really feel it. And also from the music, from the editing, from all these technical things, plus the story and plus the performances, you really feel the struggle in both characters and what they're kind of going through. So it's really quite an intense experience for both films. But I think it's necessary because that's how, it's very similar to how I felt in those situations in my own experience. Is that tension? It's very similar to how it is when it actually does happen in real life, and I imagine most people could relate to that. So it's a very relatable film that you can kind of connect with quite easily, I feel. Where are we up to now? Oh, I actually already slightly brought up this point, but both live alone. So both living alone, as I said, it's a sense of, I feel like it's also influencing them in certain ways too, even though, yes, being alone can be good in a sense of where we can find things that we are passionate about and without needing the external to tell us who we should be. At the same time, them being alone, they make certain, rash decisions that they may not have made if they lived alone, right? So there's good and downsides. It depends on the mental state, but because of both of them living alone, they do take certain transformations that, like, especially in the substance, what she does, I do wonder, like, she couldn't have done that easily if she didn't live alone, right? So that is quite interesting that, because she lives alone, she was able to do those certain actions. Granted, she could have moved away from who she lived with if she did live with people, but even still, I think that made it much more of an easier thing for her to take action in that way. Yes, and from that, both transformations happen alone. There's not other people around them. And even especially in A Different Man, even though it's a clinical thing that he does, he goes to an actual place. Once the transformation happens, which is quite suddenly, it kind of does slightly gradually happen, and at one point, there's a pretty intense scene. He literally just pulls his whole face off, and underneath looks like a whole different person. That's quite an intense scene. And from there, he acts like he's someone else, right? Hence the title, A Different Man. Both of them, the major transformation happens alone. And from that, they're both intense transformation scenes, like they look quite painful and quite brutal, and it's almost kind of it almost kind of gives this essence of self-harm in a way, almost, like towards that past self in a way. It's quite, intense, just from what actually happens, and also kind of, I feel like how they feel internally about that sense of who they were before. Both of them were quite interesting as well. Both were sci-fi solutions. Both were quite extreme. Like, the substance is like injecting this stuff, and literally another version of herself comes out of her self. It's really weird. It's like she gives birth to another version of herself. It's very strange. And then in A Different Man, it's like this clinical thing, drugs and certain things, and this scanning thing, and so on, whatever. And then, he just pulls his face off. So, quite intense, and just, definitely, quite sci-fi, out there solutions, which I kind of like that. It wasn't, completely grounded. They did... Who knows, goodness, with science and stuff nowadays, who knows if it could be possible. But, they're both quite extreme solutions still compared to what we have today, which I think is good in a way. It's not, too grounded in a sense of, just they had plastic surgery. No. It's much more extreme than that. This is interesting too. It's different in the substance, but I'll say what it is. They both do this kind of face tearing thing. They both kind of attack their faces, especially. this is a bit different in the substance, but especially in A Different Man, he literally just, as I said, pulls stuff off his face. It's like, oh. But what's interesting in the substance is when this is done, it's after the fact when she's transformed, but she has to switch back and forth between her older self and her younger self every week. Every 7 days, she has to live 7 days with the one way she looks and then another way she looks. And the interesting thing is when she goes back to her older self, she gets this date with this guy, which is, he's quite a quirky dude, but he seems genuine. You know what I mean? Like, he seems like a genuine kind of guy, and really doesn't seem that, like, he still thinks she's beautiful, even though she's older. He thinks she looks great. And it's honestly like a really beautiful opportunity for her. But anyway, she has these doubts and insecurities, and she, there's this moment where she's in the bathroom, changing how she looks, just with makeup and so on. And there's a point where she just kind of like goes crazy at her face and kind of like pulls at it slightly. And it's really quite disturbing. Like, it's quite distressing to watch that scene. And especially that particular moment, I was like, good God, I loved how it was done though. Just the use of sound, the use of music, just, it's kind of heart-wrenching to watch it. It's like, man. I really do like that scene though, just what it kind of is conveying. But anyway, so yeah, both a bit of face tearing. It's not like she draws blood or anything, but it's just, it's quite still intense, the way, like, the speed and velocity and the anger in her performance in that bit. Like, wow, so another thing too, is they both couldn't adapt and deal with the sudden change. I think because they hadn't, somewhat, both of them hadn't done the internal work, and they kind of wanted to do the external work and not worry about changing how they see themselves internally and their self-worth, aside from their appearance. And even then, would they even change their appearance if they had a stronger sense of self-worth? See? But anyway, since it was such a dramatic change and quite a sci-fi-esque change, both these characters just couldn't handle that sudden shift, I feel. And, like, even though they wanted that, a part of them wasn't ready for it in a weird way as well, because it's so different. Especially in the substance, she couldn't handle the changing back to that self. And then there was this massive struggle with both, selves in a way. Although they are one self, that's what they keep saying in the movie. You are one. It's not her and you. You are the same. They said it a lot, which is interesting. But even with A Different Man, even though he changes, there's certain things that happen in the plot still. You can see there's still an insecurity in him. Like, there's a slight moment where a guy says, oh, there's like a freckle or something on his face. It was like a slight mark. And the guy kind of like freaked out. And the guy was like, oh, oh, sorry or whatever. And he walked off. But the guy just, you could see in his face, even though he looked much different and I guess in societal standards much more attractive, he still had that, shadow of insecurity, especially. But like, especially once he did go to this area where the lady he used to live next to was doing a play, making a play and auditions and such. As that progressed, you could definitely see the insecurity coming in, and he just, the change was so dramatic. You could see it was still kind of troubling him and wanting to go back in a way. Also, I think to conform as well back to what she wanted in a way, what he thinks she wanted more so. But anyway, very interesting that both of them had trouble with that adapting to the shift, such a dramatic shift physically. Both of them also get material success, but once again, because of their self-worth, lack of self-worth and society basically downtrodding that and being very, expectant on a certain way you have to be and look, you know, it doesn't matter that, you know, especially like the female actress in The Substance, like she's got, you know, she seems like she's going pretty well for herself. And I imagine she probably could find some different work or find something else, and even something similar, but, you know, maybe a bit less money or something, or just even trying something new. She's just so, you know, clung to that approval. Not just the money, but the approval. Like, that was like a source of survival for her, a source of gratification, and to just lose that was like, you know, unthinkable for her, right? And then for the main character in A Different Man, like, he was in real estate then because he, you know, had a bit more of an appealing face for societal standards. He, you know, he ended up quite successful in there. But, you know, he had a nice apartment and stuff, but, and even it looked like he was in a relationship with someone, but, right, it was still that sense of, you know, that internal struggle, right? Yeah, he still couldn't shake it, right? Yeah, very interesting. Next thing, notice trigger moments for both characters. I particularly love, now The Substance does it quite intensely, like it's very front and center, the editing's quite intense, the music gets quite, you know, I still really like it in The Substance, how that's done, and, you know, it has a very different feel, and it raises like an anxiety feeling when you're watching it at times. But with A Different Man, they did it slightly different. They just do these like slight cutaway shots at times to people reacting. And from my perception, I was kind of in the main character's perspective, and I felt like I was kind of thinking how he was thinking. And it was like, without monologue, right? Without like a narrator saying it. But you could tell he was triggered by it. And I really like how it was done really subtly in A Different Man. I think I will talk about that a bit later as well. But I really liked how that was done in that movie particularly. But as I said, both did it in a different way, and both worked effectively for what they needed. But yeah, I think A Different Man in a lot of ways was more subtle than The Substance, but still really good. Anyway, moving on to the next thing. Both moments of intense music, even though I said like A Different Man is a bit more subtle, it does have some really quite intense sounds and music at times as well. Especially this moment after he does this audition and he's walking down the street and it's this close up, and I think it's kind of like handheld-ish as well. And there's like this, you know, this weird music, and it's like, wow, you know, I'm really getting that right now. And there's this very dramatic score throughout a lot of the film that's quite intense as well. It's a bit more kind of classical, but it does work really well. Especially as it gets higher. Like at first it's quite mellowish, but then it's like dun 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 dun, like that. It's really like quite, and it's really cool. But yeah, with The Substance, oh my god, yeah, the music is really out there, quite weirdly techno at times, and like, yeah, you can, and it's like, but it mixes with sound as well. Really good, really great use of sound, especially with The Substance. Next thing is, yeah, I felt sympathy and like empathy for both characters. Like I really felt it, and it was like, man, you know, and I could kind of get their point of view. I think we could all kind of relate to it on some level, at least at some point in our lives. We can go, yeah, I get it, you know. Really interesting stuff, I would say, that's for sure. And really relatable. So quite striking, both these films in that sense. Alright, now what are we up to now? Yes, so I kind of have already said this, but both have an addiction to approval. It's not just like they want approval, it's like they need it. It's like they're really clinging for it, especially the main chick in The Substance. Like, a lot of what she desires is that. It's not like she loves, I don't know, maybe she does, but it's like, I don't know if she really loves, like, the fitness and all that kind of stuff, and taking care of her body and all that kind of stuff, or is it just the approval she gets from that, and that's what she actually wants? I do really wonder that, yeah. Or maybe they're kind of slightly interwoven, but there's a huge emphasis on wanting that approval. In regards to A Different Man, it's like, yeah, he's trying to, like, in a lot of ways, he's literally changing himself. It's basically like the substance, but he's changing himself to get a certain validation from others, which is very understandable, and I can understand the main character especially, because if I was in his situation, man, I may have, like, if I had that choice, I probably would have done the same thing if that was an option for me. I really do wonder if I would have. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it is one of those things where it's like, man, like, if I was in his shoes, it really does kind of raise that question to you. But it's also like, too, if that same situation would have risen for me, like, later on, would I have changed back? I don't know. Like, that's quite... You can definitely tell that there's this real massive pull for approval, especially there. Or kind of wanting to kind of have a specific approval from somebody. It's a bit different in A Different Man. It's specific approval from some kind of people at times, especially this one lady, because she did at a point accept him for who he is, and then he literally wants to kind of change back to that in a weird way. Yeah, it's a weird one, A Different Man, and how that's done, but it's really interesting as well. But yeah, both get caught in... Next thing I'm moving on to, both get caught in this, mental self-image, how they, like, see themselves, and then how they think others perceive them from how they think they see themselves. They kind of think a lot of others think the same, but it's probably not the case at all, right? But yeah, that's quite interesting as well. But yeah, both as well obsessed with this ideal self, this sense of, if I was like this, then, then I would be loved, then I'd be accepted, then I'd belong, right? And it's just like, man, they think like their themselves right now isn't enough, right? And this is true for, as I said, a lot of us, and I can say I've felt this in myself as well from time to time, and it is quite striking that this movie just kind of strikes that chord, in us. Yeah, so the next thing I'm moving on with, so being obsessed with this ideal self, they both hide this less ideal self as well. But the thing is, this less ideal self sometimes has a charm to it. It has this beauty to it. And others sometimes, especially the right people, do see that in us. But because we hide that, we don't see that other people, the right people, do appreciate it, right? And because of that, right, and we can see this in both characters as well. With the substance, it's that guy that, asks her on a date, even though she's, like, older, he likes her for who she is still, and he still thinks she's beautiful. And also in A Different Man, like, the main character, the lady that lives next door and is doing the play, she's also, like, accepting him for who he is, right? And I think because he doesn't accept himself, he can't see that, right? It's probably something like that. I'm not a full-fledged psychologist, granted, but I've learned quite a bit about the mind. I've spent about quite a lot of years. I've looked into this stuff out of just curiosity, and also to kind of, help myself and such. But yeah, like, it's just it's interesting, like, how both of them can't see the people that would like them for who they are, because their insecurities hold that back, right? Their kind of self-hatred almost it's like a barrier to seeing the people that do like them for who they are, so to speak. But next thing is both at times, in an interesting way, want to go back to who they were before. In the substance, it's a bit more subtle, because it does seem like she really does want to be that ideal self, right? That girl that's much more prettier, more younger, so on. But especially when she goes back to her older self, the more she starts to lose that, the more she kind of doesn't want to lose that as well. So it's like it's a really intense internal struggle in the substance, especially. And then in A Different Man, because of circumstances and stuff, and seeing that woman again, he wants to change back at a certain point as well. And especially seeing this other guy. I haven't even mentioned this yet, but there's this other guy that, what's his name? Yeah, so Oswald, yeah, once he meets Oswald, he's like, what the hell's going on here, right? Like, and he sees he's like, it doesn't bother him so much, and he has his interests, and he has, this life, and he's like, what the hell, like, and I think in a certain way he kind of envies that in a weird way as well. But once again, it's still external. He wants to change his external again to change the internal, but that doesn't always work. Like, people think, oh, once I'll have money, I'll be happy, but it doesn't seem to be the case. See, and that's the materialistic solution, and that doesn't usually work, right? It's in here. But anyway, where am I up to? So yeah, they both want to go back to kind of how it was in a way, but at the same time not. Especially in the substance, it's like this weird. She's just completely, you can really sense that in her character. It's just a real internal conflict, Both characters. Next thing, moving on to, both characters have this internal struggle back and forth. So yeah, as I was saying, so like especially in the substance, it's just, she wants to go back, she doesn't want to go back. Oh, but and then she's like angry at herself and angry at the other self, and oh god, And then especially in this, A Different Man's are not so much like this rapid changing, but it's still this back and forth. It's not like once he changed how he looked, he was cool. No, there's a certain point where the insecurities come in again, the comparison comes in again, and certain judgments and so on, and it just, there is still this back and forth and not accepting oneself for who they are, right? Next thing, both characters need to seem to look a certain way to have a career. So because of the careers they want, they both kind of feel like they need to be a certain way to have that. In A Different Man, it's slightly different because he does still kind of find a way to make this kind of. It was only like I don't know if it was like an advertisement thing or like a workplace. I think it was more like a workplace thing you watch to kind of like respect others or whatever. It's like a presentation you show people. But still, it was something, right? And like he did still get somewhere with it. With the substance, like literally the way she looks is basically tied to how successful she'll be, right? And I guess it's kind of true with A Different Man as well. But man, it's definitely quite evident in But it's interesting, in A Different Man, he doesn't go to become a celebrity then. Once he changes his look, he goes into real estate. So that's kind of interesting, like why he went down that road. Yeah. I mean, and granted, he still did go into that play, but it's also because of that lady, I feel, as well. Yeah, very interesting indeed. But yeah, so yeah, in order to have a career, they both kind of feel that kind of need. But anyway, moving on to the next thing, they both also lie and withhold a lot about themselves to try to maintain a certain self, but this creates disconnect with others. In that they're holding back parts of themselves. Like, what do we actually know about these people? Like, these two main characters, what do we know about their interests, their hobbies, what they're passionate about? See? That's what I mean. It's quite mind-blowing when you think about it. You don't really know a lot about these two characters. Although, you do know a lot about, especially about their insecurities, and I still actually do like both of these characters in both the movies. But you just don't know a lot about them. You don't know if they're creative. You don't know if they're like, passionate about this and that. A lot of it is very much just seeking this approval. Granted, with A Different Man, he kind of still does write this play thing, and he does kind of want to learn to whistle, and there is a few things that's like, okay, he is a bit of like a curious mind, and he does seem to be somewhat creative, but it just, I feel like a lot of it, he still holds back so much, right? He holds back so much, and so his authenticity is just stifled because of this sense of, I need to be a certain way, I need to act a certain way, I need to look a certain way, especially look a certain way. And especially in the main character in The Substance, like, I don't really know anything about her character much at all, outside of like that wanting approval, and this kind of somewhat materialistic environment she's created, which is nice. Don't get me wrong; she's got a nice place she lives in. But it's just, man, like, it's just, it feels so, feel like so characters are empty. They just don't, or at least they don't express that to others. And this creates disconnect, right? So it's really interesting that both of them struggle with that because of this kind of conforming or wanting on comparison and so on. Next thing, both moments of intense music. Wait, haven't I already said that? I swear I already said that. Oh, my bad. I did that twice. Moving on. Both have moments of attacking themselves. This is interesting. So, like, in... sometimes it's intentionally, unintentionally, but still there's harm done to themselves. And, like, in A Different Man, he literally tears his face. Or he pulls his face off, so to speak, which is quite intense. I imagine... And also, like, the accidents that happen. Like, it's just attacking... It's almost like the environment is attacking him, so to speak. And then later on, too, he's, like, in a cast and he can barely move. It's... Yeah, there's a lot of, like, harm done to both of these characters. And in The Substance as well, it's like, yeah, she's, like... She actually literally does violently attack herself. She almost... I think she does kill the other version... the older version or whatever of herself, or the previous version. It's like, man, you know, it's insane. Like, it really does reflect this sense of just self-hatred, right? As I said, in A Different Man, it's a bit more subtle, and it's kind of like the environment's doing certain things as well, but it still creates that outcome of this harm done to themselves, which is, yeah, it's quite shocking, quite depressing in a way too. Yeah, so this is kind of what I've already said. This is the next point. So both bodies get badly hurt as consequences. In The Substance, she's got fucking nothing left at the end. She's just a pool of... And then it's just a head crawling around. What the fuck? But yeah. No, wait, it was just a face crawling around. My god. That movie gets so insane at the end. Like, wow. But anyway, both of them get, like, so badly hurt, you know. It's just like, wow, you know. But yeah, so next thing, both characters commit murder as well. Like, in The Substance, I'm pretty sure she kills herself. Like, I don't know, like, that's a weird thing to say. Like, she kills herself, or she, like, kills another version of herself. I don't know, like, when fucking she, like, falls apart in that, when she does that show thing and she's, like, spraying that blood around everywhere. I don't think she killed anyone there. I've watched this movie, like, 3 times. I don't think she actually killed anyone. She just, like, really messed people up. And probably gave them a lot of scars and trauma from what happened there, which, understandably, considering what happened and whatever. But anyway, like, my god, like, but yeah, but, like, in A Different Man, he literally kills the dude that was, like, because he talked shit about Oswald, and he just... Yeah, it's really interesting that it's almost like, at that point, there was a certain level of self-respect, or at least towards Oswald, but he also sees, especially how he sees himself, he kind of sees Oswald. Anyway, it's weird, because it's like, it's almost like when he sees Oswald, he sees himself in ways as well. And so when he kind of kills that guy in the end, it's like, right? It's kind of like, at that point, maybe he did have a flash of self-respect or something, although he went to such a violent level to do it. That was a crazy scene. It's really interesting with the music playing in the background too. It's like Christmas music or something. It was really upbeat music, and I was like, what the hell? He just killed that guy. And yeah, wild. I wasn't sure what to think of that in first viewing. With second viewing, I think I got it more, and I was like, wow, okay, that's interesting. But yeah, so anyway, what do we got now? Oh yeah, so both films have quite gross and, like, gory, shocking bits, especially The Substance, like, my god. But very quite, like, also very body focused as well. And I think that's appropriate for what it needed to kind of tell in the story, so it was understandable. and it was meant to be kind of explicit because and even almost explicit to kind of show the exploitive nature of that industry, so to speak. So that was interesting. This is another interesting thing. I've kind of already said this, but both characters, and this is a big tie that's very interesting, both characters have a person that seems to accept them for who they are, which is quite tragic when they tone it down due to their self-perception. So since they don't accept themselves, they have difficulty seeing people that accept them. Because if someone gives them a compliment or someone, appreciates them, they kind of just brush it off. Because it's like their self-worth doesn't allow it. It's like turning on deaf ears almost. And I think that's true. That's a very true insight into, I think, human behavior is like attracts like in a way. And I think also in the sense of if we don't accept ourselves, it's hard for us to see people that accept us, in a way. So you get more people that don't accept you, so to speak, or we think that they don't accept us. And so, yeah, it's really interesting just like the amount of trying to adhere to trying to be more likable or more accepted more so by others by physically a lot of change, but it doesn't do it. It doesn't actually become tangible change, solid change. So it is really tragic that they just completely overlook those people. And it's not personal. It's not like they're doing it because they hate those people. It's because they hate themselves, really. And it's quite sad to kind of see that reality. Next thing, last but not least in similarities, is both films are really breezy. They got solid pacing. Substance is quite long. I think it's 2 hours and 20 minutes or something. It's quite long. Different Man is only 1 hour and 40, but both of them are quite breezy. I feel like maybe it's because I have such a strong passion towards great filmmaking plus great looks into kind of like psychology and such. So it's like a amazing mix for both for me. So just the films just kind of go past like a breeze for me. I just love the experience of both of them and can relate quite heavily. So yeah, I just find both of them to be really quite well-paced experiences, I guess. So yeah, there we go. That's for similarities of The Substance and A Different Man. Now let's go to the differences. So let's start off with The Substance because I feel like there's quite a solid message in A Different Man that I want to leave right to the end. So let's start off with The Substance. So early on, let's start off with a lot of the filmy type of stuff. So the film has a glamorous feel. It has this sense of like it's very colorful, and that's the next thing. Next point I was going to say is very bright colors, very colorful, and I think that's meant to give this false sense of fame and like, as I said, like richness, or I don't know, like it's this sense of glamorous, like it's like fame and all this kind of stuff. And it's just meant to be all bright and colourful and like joyful, but it's this very deceptive type of thing, right? So yeah, I quite like how that's done. And also the bright colours as well add to the anxiety as well, I feel like. It's very bright and very intense, right? Next thing is sounds are much more noticeable and intense as well in The Substance. Like they're very much amplified in certain parts. Especially the fucking eating scene with, I said this in my review too, with Dennis Quaid's character eating a fucking lobster, and it's like Jesus. And also, as I said as well, with the when she's like attacking her face, so to speak, and about to go on that date, and she's like frustrated, and the sounds are like, it's like really, it's intense. It's really quite confronting, I really like that stuff. Next thing is effective use of close-ups. I really like the close-ups used in The Substance. Something that wasn't used so much in A Different Man. A Different Man was more further back shots. But I love some of the close-ups, like this close-up of a fly and a drink. And just like as he was eating the fucking lobsters, the close-ups, and as he's like, there's these really gross, intense shots. But I think, once again, it adds to the anxiety. It adds to this kind of feeling, And I love that. And the editing as well on top of it, really solid uses of, as I said, filmmaking choices, I feel. Also, with The Substance, they do these very subtle zoom-ins as well. Something done a bit differently in A Different Man is with the zooms, but the zooms are very slow and just, like, very slow, very subtle in The Substance. But once again, they do add to kind of like the sense of build-up and the sense of anxiety as well. So great use of that as well throughout the film. There's this very isolating depth of field used, this shallow depth of field, and it's really quite noticeable throughout The Substance as well. It's meant to once again kind of feel like she's in her head and internalizing and not really seeing the world for what it is. It's just very like very much in her head, and just from her perception, her experience, her past is what's created what she's experiencing, so to speak, in a way. As I said, it is the environment too that's creating this perception of herself, but it's also what she's interpreted from it and how she's seeing that herself in it. And so it isolates her from others and makes her feel, alone, so to speak. So great use of depth of field there. I love the cool transitions and time lapses in The Substance, because it does progress over quite a bit of time, and like these hard cuts and then these like transition shots. Yeah, they do some really creative stuff with that, and I quite like that throughout the film. So that was interesting. Next thing I noticed just in The Substance was the switching concept. That's very different to A Different Man, because A Different Man, he switches to the guy and then that's it, right? And it's just like he kind of wants to go back, but he can't. But with although he kind of does switch psychologically, I feel like at a certain point when he kind of like attacks that guy in a way, I feel. But anyway, like, it's more a psychological switch. But this is a literal switch in The Substance, where she's like switching back and forth, and the internal conflict and the confusion and the anger and the anxiety and just everything, and from that is quite intense. So that concept really works well, and they really utilize that for this film. So the next thing is this is kind of like in A Different Man, but I think it's done differently in The Substance. But that is comparing oneself with oneself. So this is particularly what I mean by this is comparing her older self with a younger version of herself, right? And because her younger self would be seen in society's eyes as more watchable, more attractive, more desirable, she compares herself to that. Like, I know, like, they sometimes say this in psychology, instead of comparing yourself to others, compare yourself to who you were yesterday. And I do see there's some good to that on some positive levels, but I do see some problems with that as well, in a sense of, like, if you look at yourself when you were younger and think you looked beautiful, and now you see yourself now and don't, that's still, you know what I mean? There's still some suffering there. So there is some truth to that, but I can see dangers to that as well. I can see downsides to that advice too. So it's kind of like a balance, I guess, with that kind of piece of advice. But especially when I see it in this film, and yeah. But yeah, so I definitely do see that in this film as well, as that idea of that comparison. And especially when the older, her first version of herself even judges her newer version, and that's really interesting. And now she's comparing that, and and there's always this conflict with both versions, pretty much. So this is the thing in The Substance that was interesting. It gave me a deeper perspective, and in a way, like, empathy for women to, like, maintaining their beauty. Men have this struggle too. Don't get me wrong, like, men get insecure about, like, grey hairs, and, like, if they've worked out a lot in their life and, their muscle starts to sag a bit, they're like, oh, look at this, right? But I feel like with women, it's I feel like it's much more of a problem for most. And so, like, watching this movie, it gave me a whole different view of it. Like, I don't think I just realized how intense it can be. Especially if someone in, like, an industry of beauty and, like, where their appearance is such a big thing for them to actually have a career. I don't think I realized how intense it can be. So I'm actually grateful towards this movie for really showing me that perspective in a more intense way. So I actually really liked that the movie was so intense to really show that, right? So, because I remember watching, I was like, man, what a fucking struggle that looks like. Like, I never realized just how much. So it really did give me a deeper sense of empathy for that kind of situation, I guess, you know. Moving on to the next thing. Theme of addiction and escaping oneself. This is something I don't exactly think of much in A Different Man, but this was definitely the case in The Substance. And even the fact that she, like, injected it, right? The fact that it does give this sense of drugs, I feel, this sense of escaping, which is a part of what drug use kind of is escaping oneself and escaping one's problems. But especially in this, it's like escaping oneself. I found that really interesting. So just like this sense of she does, in a way, become addicted to that other version of herself. But then there's like this struggle, because then when she does change back, she's like, oh, the other one's ruining my life. But it's like, and that's how I feel some people feel when they're addicted to something, is, oh, that substance is ruining my life, right? Literally the substance. And it's like, wow, you know, so it's like, I find that really interesting, of just like, it does actually kind of correlate with other addictions, especially drugs, in a way, I feel, as well. She's like literally addicted to that other version of herself plus addiction, and it's because there's a deeper thing she wants, and that's that approval, and underneath that, it's a lack of self-worth. See, and so the approval she gets kind of band-aids that lack of self-worth, right? Very interesting indeed. And the reason why her self-worth is so, I feel like, hurt is because kind of like her survival depends on it. Like, in a way, like, especially on a, like, that's how she's literally earned her living, is through her appearance. So you can understand why she'd be so self-critical on herself for it, right? Moving on to the next thing. It goes fucking insane later on. Like, A Different Man kind of does too, but my god, this movie goes really off the fucking rails. And I kind of like it. I know there are some people that are like, man, I don't think it had to go that crazy, but man, I think it really, like, take it literally, psychologically, or whatever. I think it just really highlights that anxiety, that like, just that struggle, right? So, I actually kind of like it. I don't really have much issue for how fucking insane it goes, and I find it even kind of funny, just how fucking... Yeah, so I really don't have much issue with it, and how it kind of insane it goes later on. And last but not least, theme of impermanence. This is literally highlighted in the first few minutes, 5 minutes of the movie. This star they show, and this top-down shot of it, and how it changes over time. Love that. Because it's true. Like, it's something that our lives change constantly, and if we resist that, we suffer. Right? Simple as that. So, yeah, I like that there's that theme of impermanence, I feel like, throughout the film too. It's like things constantly change, and if we resist that change, we suffer. And even if it's in ourselves, how our bodies change, how our minds change, how just experience changes. If we try to stop that, you know, through substances, through avoiding, through whatever, it's going to create more, more suffering, so to speak. So yeah, that is the differences in The Substance. Now, let's move on to the differences in A Different Man. The differences in A Different Man. Okay. More gritty look. This is something I noticed early on in this film. It's much more gritty. As I said, The Substance had a more bright... Sorry, pardon me. The Substance had a more bright and vibrant look, which is meant to give off this false sense of like, ooh, you know. But A Different Man, much more gritty, and I think it's meant to reflect the main character's internal state. So I really do like that different take on it, and it also shows how drawn the main character is in the substance of that way of living. Right, she is drawn to that. As I said, probably a lot of it's to do with approval, but like the colors and the vibrancy, it's like, you know, she wants that, right? So yeah, much more gritty look though in A Different Man, which I really liked. Moving on from that is the film grain. It's more gritty looking to reflect, I think, the main character's experience and the environment, right? So I feel like, yeah, so that it's not just the gritty look, but like going into detail, like the film grain is much more noticeable. I don't know if The Substance was shot on film. I think that was shot on digital, but I really do like in in A Different Man that it is shot on film, because it really does give that more grittier look, and it really does capture the details. I feel like a bit more in his face and in other people's faces in general. So I think it was a great choice in general. Now this is something I really liked. Now even though The Substance had zoom-ins, Different Man is much more noticeable, and I actually really liked how they used these like very slow zoom-ins. It reminds me of like Stanley Kubrick. It was really cool in some points, and I really loved how that was utilized throughout the film. I think once again it just captures drawing into the main character and his struggles, so to speak. So I really loved that use of those slow zoom-ins there, and even some like snap zooms as well towards his face a couple of times as well. I love the long-held master stationary shots. Wow, that sounds like that's a big mix of words. So like these stationary shots, these wide shots, and it just gives time for contemplation, right, with kind of what's going on. Instead of just cutting back and forth and being really engaged, it gives time to kind of reflect kind of what's going on kind of beneath the surface with the main character, and they have these little spaces in the conversation, and I love that. I actually really love it. Even though it's an hour and 40 minutes, they capture a lot in this film in that small amount of time compared to like The Substance. And I really like just how they did that. So very effective, once again, use of a filmmaking choice there, I feel, as well. Next thing, kind of already said this, but love the use of long takes as well. There is some times where the camera does move around, especially like this one on the stage, and where the camera just keeps moving, and I love that. I feel like, once again, it puts you in that environment, but it also, I feel like, helps you connect with the main character as well and what he's going through. And it gives time to reflect as well, I feel, at times as well. And it adds a sense of chaos, I feel like, as well. Like, especially that one on the stage and the camera's like moving around, following this actor, that actor. I really love that. So great use of long take there as well to capture some like chaos and probably what's going on in his head as well. Feel the impact of hurt from the main character immediately. This is something that's a little bit different in The Substance. It happens pretty quick too, but I feel in this movie, bam, it's pretty much there. Literally, I think after like the little opening credits bit, literally the shot is him like leaning against this drinking fountain, and even though it's for the thing he's filming, you still feel this hurt, like straight away. I love that, like just, oh, straight away. So I love that. I think it's a really great thing to just straight away sense what this main character is going through. Like, he's suffering in here a lot due to how he perceives himself from kind of the environment and what they expect and so on in comparison. And that's just taken such a toll on him, as a person. Next thing. Even though the main character changes his appearance, personal insecurities are stuck very much. Like this book, Psycho-Cybernetics. Let me just bring it down for a moment. Oh, God, just here. So this book, really good book if you want to check it out. Really good book by, on the side. Oh, I can't read. There we go. So yeah, great book. But basically it's it basically highlights this kind of thing of how you perceive yourself, it affects your self-image and so on, and this doctor changed how people looked, and this is in the book. And some people did. They became much more confident, they became much more so on, but some people didn't, and they still felt this insecurity, they still felt low in confidence, and the doctor was wondering, Dr. Maxwell Maltz, I think he's a doctor. Is he a doctor? He was a plastic surgeon anyway. I don't know did plastic surgeons class as a doctor? But anyway, Maxwell Maltz, nonetheless, he noticed this in some patients, and he's like, what's going on? And so he looked into that, and he became very interested in more about self-image as his life went on. But anyway, and then he wrote a book and other stuff and all that. But anyway, so like he just like it's interesting, just like seeing that and actually seeing it in a film. I love that. And it just like, even though in The Substance, I feel like in some ways, if the main character, she did change into that younger version of herself and she didn't have to switch, she would have had insecurities, but it would have been a bit different. It wouldn't have been so extreme. I feel like in this movie, it was different, right? It was a much more... Yeah, yes, probably in the substance, if she did change to that other version of herself, over time, that version would have gotten old, and then, same problem, perhaps. But in A Different Man, even though he changes his appearance and it's permanent, he still has that, right, that struggle. So it's a little bit different, I feel. Anyway, moving on to the next thing. And especially as the line Oswald says to him as the very last line of the film, "You haven't changed at all." I love that. And then the main character laughs after he says that, and I'm like, man, that's so good. You know what I mean? It's just I find that so funny, because he didn't know him beforehand, that he looked kind of like how he did. But it's man, it's interesting that he said that to him. It was such a great line to end on. But yeah, it literally is yes, externally he changed, but internally, same thing, same kind of programming, same kind of, because that's why he changed himself, right? See, that's what I mean. I do wonder that if both these characters loved themselves, or had a very much higher self-respect and self-esteem and so on, and had better confidence from that and all that, would they have even changed how they looked? Why would you? See? So now I don't know, because I don't know a lot. Maybe there are some people that may object to that have gone through plastic surgery or something, or because people it's not when someone's... I'm honestly curious about that. If someone loved themselves, and if someone if one of you in the comments can relate to this, if any of yous know anyone that seem to have a very high self-esteem, or maybe you had a high self-esteem of yourself, but you still went through plastic surgery, I'd be curious to hear about that, and what would be your reasonings for that, or maybe just speculation, what would be a reason to go through something like that if you already loved yourself and accepted yourself as you are. Something to think about for me, and maybe perhaps for you. And as I said, feel free to put some comments down below about that. I feel like that would be an interesting discussion. Next thing, so when Oswald comes into the picture, this brings a whole different amount of wisdom to both films, right? I feel like the message can be taken to both, right? And I think a lot of it, once again, it comes back to self-love. It's about accepting yourself, who you are, accepting the way things turned out, the cards you've been dealt with, and making the most of your life, And I'll go to the last point, and then I'll just have a bit of a dialogue about it. So the last point is, Oswald makes the most of his existence. It's like his carefree attitude and self-perception influences how people see him. See, because the main character, Edward, he's like this a lot. He curls up. He's very much insecure, and I guess people can sense that at times. And from that, people, it's not even people treat him differently, but he treats himself in that way, and then he can't express himself to others, right? Once again, it's that hiding, right? And so because of that, he has great difficulty, making friends, having strong relationships. Granted, Oswald still accepts him for who he is, and same with the lady as well, that lived next door, and is still friends with him at the very end of the film, even though all the stuff he done, and he went to jail and everything. It's just so sad to see that. It is a thing, isn't it? People accept us a lot of the time for who we are, yet we don't in ourselves. And I find that really interesting, that we try to, I think a lot of us as humanity, we try to overcompensate, because when we, I will say for myself, I don't find myself judging people harshly over a lot of things. I definitely do judge in a sense of status and, oh, should I talk to that person? Should I not? You know, would I even have anything to talk about with those people? Yeah, I do have that kind of thing, and and I could work on that, definitely. But in regards to like judging people harshly, I don't do that very much, you know? And so, granted, I don't know, there probably is people that still do that quite a lot, even though I don't do it. But there probably is a lot of people that don't do it, right? And the people that do it, well, it says a lot more about their insecurities as well, right? I feel like a lot of the time. Or something that they're going through in their mind, whatever. And so like, yeah, it's just this acceptance. We accept others, I think, quite easily, but still in a lot of ways, we don't with ourselves. And it's just, I think in part it is a survival mechanism to try to, you know, fit in. We don't want to become outcast, you know. But it is a sad thing. It is a sad thing we do this because it does affect how we connect with others because we're not connected with ourselves. And I find Oswald's character really inspiring, so to speak, because he's just so himself, you know. He's so carefree, so honest, you know. It's such a beautiful thing. I think there's honestly a lot we could learn from Oswald's character. Yeah, he's quite inspiring, to be honest. I basically said a lot of the points that I was going to say for my conclusion, but anyway, I'll go through it anyway. So yeah, I think there's a lot we can learn from Oswald's character, you know, in this film. And I think it offers a way out, which is within, you know, loving ourselves, accepting ourselves, finding out what we are drawn towards, you know, questioning our limiting beliefs, our assumptions, negative assumptions about ourselves, assumptions about others. You know, I think a lot of it is to do with within. It's not changing who you are externally a lot. It's to do with in here and in here. Yeah. And so Oswald does things of value and meaning to him. You know, he does yoga, he reads books, you know, and he's passionate about this, and he's willing to learn new things, and he's very sociable with people because he's just him, right? He's not trying to put on some facade, so to speak. And perhaps he is quite an extroverted character too, which definitely helps. I feel like in a lot of ways, especially with if we have that pull to socialize. But granted, also being an extrovert, there is that tendency too, I guess, for some people that would be extroverts. I wouldn't know because I think I identify as an introvert, I would say for myself. But I feel that extroverts would still feel that need to want to conform. Maybe even more so, because in order to fulfill that need to socialize and recharge by doing that. So maybe I'm wrong about that. But yeah, so yeah, he does things that are of meaning and value to him, and then also on top of that, he isn't afraid to express that to others. And this is key, right? He's passionate about certain things, and he just freely talks about it. There's not this holding back. There's not this, oh, no one would care, you know, or, oh, that's not interesting. People wouldn't really care if they like know that thing about me, or that doesn't matter. You know, all these things, it just, you know, it creates disconnect, right? And I feel I learnt more about Oswald's character with a much shorter presence. Like, he wasn't in the movie that much, but he was in the film. Alright, what am I trying to say? He was in the film for such a short time, but I felt so much more like I knew him, right, than any of those other two characters. I mean, I knew those other two characters in regards to their struggle, but as I said, outside of their like interests, hobbies, what they're passionate about, what's meaningful to them, I don't know that much. Like, a lot of it seems like approval and acceptance and, well, I guess that's kind of the same thing. But yeah, like, just this internal struggle, right? But outside of that, I didn't know much about them. And, like, I feel like I know Oswald so much more from such a shorter time he's in the film compared to those other two characters. And it's like, man, you know, it just shows you that, like, yeah, it doesn't take much, you know, to express yourself in a sense of once it starts coming out, there you go, you know. But I do find that interesting. Yeah. And another thing too, last but not least, his character seemed very truthful and sincere. And I love that. Well, Oswald doesn't really seem like he has much to hide. He doesn't seem to have some ulterior motive or agenda. He just is what he is, right? Like, even like, there's a moment where the main character, Edward, goes to the lady that lives in the apartment, and he confronts her and says, oh, you know, Oswald's with this chick at the park, and, you know, and he's got this kid. And she's like, yeah, that's his ex-wife. Like, he's that honest and sincere. He told her about that too. He didn't hide that. Like, he's just such an open, honest person. And I think that's because he's so connected with himself. And he's like, part of him's probably like, look, if people don't accept me for who I am, that's okay. They're not the right people for me. It's as simple as that. They're not evil. They're not bad. They're just, you know, they are what they are. That's fine. I don't have to be friends with everyone. I love myself. I accept myself. And that's what matters, you know? Man. What a fucking movie. What two fucking great movies. Like, Oswald. I think we all can learn a lot from Oswald, right? Well, that was... Fuck. I think I recorded for almost an hour for this video. Jesus Christ. I don't know how long this video is going to be. It's probably going to be about an hour. I don't know who the hell is going to watch all of this. I mean, granted, me saying that, there you go. I'm thinking, oh, no one would find this valuable. But who knows? Maybe some people will think this, you know, was really fucking good. Who knows? I guess we'll see. But man, it's just... And even if not, I'm happy I put this out there and shared my views on this, because this movie was great. I really loved it. Both these movies were great. And I love the message in a different man. I feel like there could be a message in a lot of films, like Oswald. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. If you've watched this all the way up to this point, you're a fucking legend. So you might as well check out some more content of mine if this is something you're interested in. So hit the like button and subscribe. I'd very much appreciate that. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on this as well. You know, because these are two really great films, and I'd love to see more movies like this. You know, share your thoughts, and maybe share some movies that are similar to this. I'd love to explore some more movies, or maybe even do a reaction video on it at some point. I might even at some point do a reaction commentary to these as well. If you would be interested in that, let me know. Just kind of really go through it and break it down as it's actually playing. But yeah, anyway, I think that's it for this video. So thank you very much for watching. If you've watched all the way up to this point, wait, oh god, I'm just repeating what I said. I was about to literally just go to loop. Yes, so that's it. I'm done. I'm finished. This video is done. I can't believe fucking how long this video was. Anyway, thank you for watching. Hope to catch you folks in the next one.